Again, Bears. This is Mr. Bird with an overview of the ACT reading section. Many of the skills assessed in the English section overlap with the reading section. However, the reading section focuses more on students' abilities in comprehending and interpreting what they read rather than analyzing the manner in which it is written. It's all about the content of the reading and how the speaker utilizes language to express meaning. In other words, students will have to analyze how the text is put together in order to determine its central purpose, its main idea, and its themes. There are three major skill categories that the ACT reading section assesses. Those include students' abilities interpreting the following: key ideas and details, craft and structure, and integration of knowledge and ideas. In order to demonstrate that they can analyze reading passages for their key ideas and details, students will have to be able to identify central ideas and themes. They'll also have to be able to summarize information and ideas correctly. That's why it's so important that teachers have students write down notes while they read. That skill can definitely be applied to the ACT reading section. One of the main skills teachers cover when teaching students how to write effectively is structure. Think back to how many times when students write essays, their teachers tell them to make sure the paper is organized to where the reader can see how the ideas are connected. On the ACT reading section, students will have to show that they understand how those relationships work in terms of building arguments and expressing themes. Please note the asterisk by make logical inferences and look at the first question from the reading section from the practice ACT. It asks, which can be inferred after reading lines 8 through 16. Remember that to infer means to get information or ideas from a text without the speaker having to specifically say what it means. There are numerous questions on the ACT that will focus on inference. As students read the passages in the English section of the ACT, they will need to make notes about the craft and structure of the writing. As stated earlier, many of the skills necessary to do well on this section were tested on the English section as well. Students will have to evaluate how the text is put together in order to convey the text's meaning. In doing so, students will have to analyze why authors might have chosen certain words and what they mean in the context. They will also have to look at how the text is arranged and determine whether that affects the overall meaning of the passage. Students will have to take into account the perspectives of the speaker, the audience, and the author in order to demonstrate their abilities in interpreting the written word. Soapstone is an excellent tool to use when completing the reading section of the ACT. For those students who have ever had a teacher have them utilize Soapstone, the ACT is an excellent opportunity to apply those skills. Notice how question number 15 asks students to show that they understand how a segment from a text would function within the text. Throughout the reading section of the ACT, students will have to evaluate how writers integrate knowledge and ideas into their works. Students will have to demonstrate that they comprehend what the author claims. In other words, students will have to be able to recognize an essay's thesis or a prose work's themes and be able to determine how those are expressed in a text. Students will also have to show that they can differentiate between facts and opinions. Some of the pieces of writing in the ACT reading section are narrative, whereas others may be informative or persuasive. Students will have to apply their analytical skills in determining what type of text it is they are reading and how well the author brings the components of such a text together in order to make an effective argument through supporting evidence and or reason. Questions like item number 5 from the practice ACT show up quite frequently. Therefore, students should always ask themselves while they are reading, what is the purpose of this text? Why might the speaker say what he or she says in order to correctly answer such questions? Take a look at the directions. The directions say, each passage in this section is followed by questions about the reading. Read the passage, then answer each question, selecting the best answer and marking it on the answer document. Refer to the passage as often as needed. Be sure to note that it says select the best answer. That means be sure to look at all options for response. Notice the time limit compared to the number of questions. Students will have to read 4 passages and answer 10 questions about each one in 35 minutes. Because of that time constraint, students should employ the following strategies. There are 4 passages that run about 750 words each in the reading section. Each passage has 10 questions. Therefore, students should make sure they look at the passage's content first and determine which ones they find more interesting. The types of reading selections are as follows: humanities, natural science, prose fiction, or social science. Look at the subject categories and passage titles from the recent Case 21 Practice ACT that Bunker Hill Juniors took. Notice that the humanities article focuses on a philosopher's view of art, and the natural sciences passage was about visions of algae in the 18th century botany. The prose fiction section contained 2 different short pieces of fiction, and the social studies passage focused on a French astronomer. Look at the titles and content areas and pick the one that sparks the most interest. If any of the titles jumps out, do it first. Students do better at reading when they can either connect to it on a personal level or if they have prior knowledge of the context. Students should know that each of these types of genres focus on specific topics related to those areas. For example, the social studies passages will be about archaeology, biography, business, economics, history, and psychology. Students who have no interest in those subject matters should skip those articles and come back to them later on. The natural science passage could be about biology, chemistry, natural history, physics, or technology. Students who love science might want to start there. Those who don't care for the sciences should look for another one to do first. The prose fiction section can be based on excerpts from short stories or novels. The type of students who love to read novels and short stories will want to start here. For those who cannot stand anything fiction, try one of the nonfiction articles or essays. Humanities passages will be based on personal essays concerning architecture, art, language, and philosophy. If those topics will put a student to sleep, he or she probably does not want to start there. On the recent Practice ACT, Bunker Hill students actually scored better on the humanities and natural sciences sections than they did on the prose fiction and social studies sections. However, that might not necessarily mean that Bear students find those areas more interesting or that those are our students' strong points. One might attribute it to the fact that the humanities article came first, followed by the one about natural sciences. Bunker Hill students scored lowest on the article about great astronomers, but that might be because it was the last passage and students might have been strapped for time. Remember, look at the types of articles and their subject matters to determine which one might be the best to do at the beginning of the reading section. Pick the one that could be done best and put time into it. Unlike the math section of the ACT, the questions in the reading section do not increase in difficulty. Therefore, the questions on the last article are of the same difficulty as those on the first passage. That is why it's okay to pick a passage out of order to do first. In addition, students should look at the types of questions and see which ones they might do best. Approximately 20% of the questions in the reading section involve determining a word's meaning within the context. Remember all those times a teacher said, use your context clues when students didn't know the meanings of words? This is the time to apply those skills. Look at question 21 from the Case 21 practice test. It's on page 8 of the reading section. Question 21 says, as it is used in line 5 of passage A, the word perturbations most nearly means A, Accomplishments. B. Anxieties. C. Impartialities. Or D. Innovations. Always refer back to the text. In other words, reread the section of the passage that applies to the question. That section of the passage says, "How old was I then? 11 or 12 years? More probably 13, for before then it's too early to be seriously in love. But I won't venture to be certain, considering that in southern countries the heart matures early, if that organ is to blame for such perturbations." That I had. If rereading it does not automatically make the answer stand out, even though there are clues like "won't venture to be certain" and "the heart matures early" that can lead a reader to understand that the speaker had some mixed up feelings about being in love at a young age, try plugging in the words from the answer choices. Does it make sense to blame the heart for accomplishments, impartialities, or innovations when talking about young love? Probably not. Would anxieties describe the way someone feels about falling in love when a preteen? Most likely. Students who struggle with this type of question should look for others on which he or she might do better. Think back to the fact that students only have 35 minutes to read four 750 word passages and to answer 40 questions. With that amount of work in such a short amount of time, it is okay to speed read. Many of the questions in the reading section will focus on the central purpose of the passage. Students will not have time to analyze every sentence in detail due to this time constraint. Therefore, many people who offer guidance on how to successfully complete the reading section of the ACT suggest to read the questions first. That way, students will know what to look for as they quickly read the context. While speed reading and looking for the information needed to answer the questions, annotate. Highlight key ideas. Write a quick note about the central purpose. Remember how teachers tell students to know what an essay's thesis is or what a story's theme is? Students need to be able to address those types of main idea in the reading section of the ACT. To understand why it might be important to read the questions first on the ACT reading section, please look at question 20 from the Case 21 Practice ACT. It's on page 6 of the reading section. Question 20 asks, what did researchers eventually discover was unnecessary for the survival of algae? A, warm temperatures, B, sunlight, C, an airtight space, or D, a damp environment? Students who read the questions first would know to look for specific details from the text regarding what is unnecessary for the survival of algae. Without a doubt, the reading section is challenging. However, applying some of the tips from the previous slides will definitely help students increase their chances of reaching a score of 17 to show that they are career and college ready. Don't forget, freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, that starting next year, the state of North Carolina may require seniors to take 2 additional courses, one in math and one in English, if they do not reach that level 17. That said, if students can narrow down choices and guess from there, it still demonstrates that they have some skills in the area tested. However, when students look at the clock and see that they will only have a couple of minutes to go and that they have several blank questions, they will need to fill in the rest with the same letter. Remember, narrow down as best you can before guessing and only random guess when the time is nearly out and there will be barely enough time to fill in the bubbles. In order to recap, Here are the tips shared today on how to do better on the reading section of the ACT. Choose the passages that spark interest first. Questions are not in order of difficulty. Speed read. Read the questions first so to know what answer to look for while reading. Use the process of elimination to make an educated guess. If you run out of time, mark the same letter for the remaining questions. One additional bit of advice for students who want to increase their AT score, and that is the following. Read. Not only will working on reading allow students to do better on the ACT, it will improve their abilities in all academic areas. Students should find something that interests them and read everything about it they can find until they become experts in it. And by doing that, it's amazing the improvements they will show in their abilities to read anything. Read, read, read.